everybody, this is Trish with Peregrine Designs. I was trying to dream up something new and interesting to make for folks, and I came across a YouTube video that talked about how to make a backseat car organizer, and that attaches to the back of your front seat so that the people in the back, maybe kids in the back, have places to put their stuff and all kinds of necessities that everybody has in their vehicle. So I dreamed this up, and I came up with, I think, a pretty good idea on how to make this really functional and very, very pretty. I do want to give a shout out to Annie Unrein, because there are a lot of really good products out there, but Annie Unrein, Unrein, she does a video on how to do this as well, and hers is just really beautiful with zippers and the whole 9 yards. And I didn't use her video, but I still use the same kind of concept on how to make this functional and pretty. So let me show you what I did. This is one that I thought turned out really pretty. It measures 17 across and 26 long, and it has kind of a plethora of different pockets that you can see right here. But this top pocket here, fingers getting the thing, the top pocket here on the left-hand side, that's for your iPad/notebook, and it'll carry a very large iPad/notebook. And behind that pocket, behind this one right here, there is another separate pocket so that you can put notebooks, you can put all kinds of things behind there. To the right, you've got a water bottle storage, and this will hold a very large water bottle. So I thought that that was very functional. And surprisingly enough, through the vinyl, you can actually still work your iPad. So I thought that was really pretty. And for people who don't need something quite so bright, I made a lot in, several in much more neutral colors, because some people will want the organizer, but they don't necessarily want it in, you know, dragonflies. So that's what I've made, and I think that that's very functional, and I think it will hold well and be great looking in a car. So if you'll stick with me, I'll show you how to make it. Okay, I'll talk about fabric in a minute, because I wanted to explain what I mean by lining pockets and stuff like that. We'll talk about fabric and how much you're going to need. Shape Flex. You're going to need a fair amount of Shape Flex. Shape Flex is SF101, and it's got a nubbly texture on the back. That's the glue, and it's got kind of a cotton weave on the front. So you'll need a fair amount of that. I always err on the side of having way too much than too little. So 3-4 yards should be enough, I hope. Stitch Witchery. Stitch Witchery is a product. This is Stitch Witchery. It is basically it's a glue that they've dried and they've cut into ribbons. You're looking at a ½ yard, and you need a roll of Stitch Witchery. It's a great product. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. People hem pants and fuse fabric, so it works really well fusing fabric. Pellon 926 is what really gives this car organizer real stand-up. Pellon 926, this is Pellon 926, and you can see that it's got some substantial depth to it. It is not as heavyweight as Peltex or Timtex. Peltex or Timtex is what you would see in the brim of a baseball hat, but Pellon 926 is a very, very nice medium to make that bag have serious stand-up. So this is really great. You don't need much. You'll need about 3/4 yard. 1 inch strapping. Strapping is, and I get this on Amazon, but strapping is nylon webbing strapping. You'll need, what did I say? About 2½ yards of strapping. I recommend that you go with a very light color, white, tan, maybe a very light silver, nothing dark, because the dark color of the strapping will corrupt the color of your fabric that you're trying to cover it with. 1 inch swivel hooks. This is a swivel hook. And I really like this one. This is a lobster. It's kind of got a lobster claw on here. I really like this. This is nice and very substantial. I got this on Amazon. I think I got about 50 of them for $20. Don't quote me on that, but not a bad price and very sturdy, so I like that. Let's see, swivel hooks. Tri-glide slides. These are tri-glide slides here. My tri-glide slides that I like on this one that work well have the slide that actually maneuvers. and they come stationary as well. This is perfectly fine for the weight that this is going to be carrying. So this is an economical as well. So you'll need 2 of those. You will also need 2 D-rings, and again, all on Amazon, but you'll need 2 1-inch D-ring because it's got to match your 1-inch webbing. Okay, so you'll need 2 of those. You'll need vinyl. You'll need a piece of vinyl. You can't see it well, but this is a piece of vinyl that I bought at Joann's. This vinyl happens to be 12 gauge vinyl. And you'll see sometimes on Amazon 12 mils or 12 something. My understanding from the reading is that 12 gauge and 12 mils are, or millimeters or whatever, are roughly equal to each other. I'm using 12 gauge. And it actually works through your iPad. When you've got your iPad underneath here and you swipe up and everything, this actually works. So you don't have to take the iPad out to get your iPad to work. So I'm using 12 gauge. You could probably go somewhere between 8, 10, and 12 would probably be a sweet spot. But 12 gauge seemed to work well. The nice thing about it, if you buy it at Joann's or Hobby Lobby, it comes on a roll. And so when you unroll it, it's not real wrinkly. People have complained on Amazon that it came really folded hard and it was a real itch to get the fold out. So that one I would probably search for Joann's or Hobby Lobby to get that. Sewing needle. Look at a heavier weight sewing needle like a 100/16, a denim weight sewing needle. You will be going through a fair amount of fabric and that will get your machine's attention, and I don't want your machine to bark too hard at you. Let me talk about the fabric. I switched over to this one. Your fabric, you're going to need 1 yard of this kind of fabric right here. This is what I consider kind of the lining fabric that does the front lining, and it goes around to the back as well. So 1 yard will work well. My recommendation in that particular selection, this selection, make sure certainly that it works with your colors, but I also like the variety of design here because it breaks it up. If you use a flat color, a solid color, it's flat and solid, and I don't think it's as pretty. So you're going to need 1 yard of this right here. That should be enough to do this one, the back side, and your binding and your strapping, to wrap your strapping. So that should be enough for that. For this pretty fabric right here, I need, let me see what I wrote down so I don't lie to you. About 3/4 yards for all your pockets. So, I always err on more. So just buy a bucket load and be done with it. For your pocket lining, what I don't do is I don't use really great fabric as my lining. I will use a complement as my lining. Why? Because great fabric is expensive, and the lining, you can make a really beautiful lining and have it much less expensive. So I go ahead and use a nice, less expensive lining fabric. You'll need elastic. You'll need, shoot for, I use in this particular instance a 6.5-inch piece of 1/2 inch elastic. So you buy it by the roll or you buy it by the, amount. So you're going to need 6.5 of that. You will need, this piece right here is the piece where you really can play with. This measures 12 inches across and 9 inches deep. And so my recommendation is you go for something really cute, because if you've got a kid in the back and she is really hopped up on, Disney princesses, you could get some fussy fabric and cut that out and make that the Disney princess. And then again, what I don't do is that's the fabric, but then a lot of times I will use a simple lining on the back so that I can economize on my more expensive fabric. So you'll need a piece of that. You will also need lining. Did I talk to you about lining? Lining here, this brown lining here that lines everything. The pocket lining, about 1/2 yard of pocket lining, okay? And that, I think, and we'll beat this to death as we talk about it a little bit more, but I think that pretty well beats it to death in terms of what you're going to need. I wanted to give you a brief laydown. Most of you know how to do this, but I want to show you how to cut this 1 yard fabric. And you know what I've said, I tend to like the yard fabric, the panel fabric, to have dimension in design because it makes for a prettier work. Let's cut this at 26 inches because that's the cut. that means that you have all of this left over. Okay, and this is part of it that's going to be your bindings, your strip that covers your webbing and also your 2.5-inch binding. But let me show you briefly how to cut this piece. Your natural inclination is to go ahead, you know, and cut 17 inches like this, and you have two pieces. Now you have a fold here, but you have two pieces, but then unfortunately you have two extra pieces here. That is not as efficient as I would like. So what I'm going to tell you to do is, you're almost right. Let's cut off the selvage. Okay, now come here. You can turn it around, because if you're right-handed, this is the way I tend to cut. Cut your pieces 17 inches here. Okay, so you have, this is all square. And now, instead of having two pieces that are, you have one piece, but it's a complete piece, okay? And this piece happens to read right at, you know, 25 to 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 inches. So do your calculations, but you should be able to get 2 3/4 for your, to cover your strapping. You should be able to get 2, and you'll need 2 runs of this, because this is 44 inches. When you open this all up, it's 44 inches. So you should be able to get 2 runs at 2 3/4. That's what you're going to need, okay? And then you're going to need runs at 2.5. This is not 44, this is only 22. So you'll get 2 runs, you'll get a run of 2.5 here, you get a run at 2.5 here, and then you'll probably get another one down in here. So that's a more efficient way to cut your 1 yard fabric to be able to do your panel and all your bindings. Okay. Okay, let's start doing some of your cuts. The first cut I want you to do is your Pellon 926. And you're going to cut that. It comes in a 20-inch width, okay, but you're going to cut it at 17 inches by 25 inches long. Your final length for your car organizer is going to be 25 inches long. And the reason why I cut it, but you're going to cut your fashion fabric 26 inches long, and I'll show you why in just 2 seconds. So cut your Pellon 17 wide by 25 long. This is my fabric that I'm going to use for my main lining fabric. And this fabric, what I've done is I want you to take it and I want you to cut this fabric 17 wide by 26 inches long, 26 long. Why did I cut it 1 inch longer? Because what I do, because your Pellon, you're going to fuse this to your back, because what I do is I take the extra and I pull it over so that I have a nice crease at the top. It's hard to, it's hard to get a good fold on your Pellon because it's thick and it's got substance. So it's easier for me to just fold your fabric. But I want you to cut this fabric 17 by 26. I want you to then go ahead and interface that fabric with your Shape Flex. And again, I'll cut my runs of Shape Flex 17 by 26 and go ahead and fuse it to the back of this fabric here, okay? One will be fused, and well, both ends. You'll have a front and a back. You'll have 2 pieces of your purple here. One will have the Shape Flex that's fused to the back, easy. This one will have Shape Flex fused to the back, but it'll also have your Pellon 926. And what I'll do is I'll take my Stitch Witchery here, and I'll take 4 little pieces of it, and I'll just go ahead and put it here, just little pieces right here, so that I kind of tack this down in my corner. So I'll put a piece here, and on my next piece, I'll put a piece here, and then I'll just go ahead and fuse that down. Why? Because what that does is that keeps this fabric here pretty nicely fused to the Pellon, so you don't have to mess with it. Okay, this is what I'm going to make my car organizer out of. I thought the dragonflies were really cute. I thought that would be real sweet. This is your main fashion fabric. These are going to be your pockets. And I'll try to move my thing, and I apologize if I'm going to jink you around quite a bit. But if you take a look, quilting cotton comes in a width of about 42 to 44 inches. So I want you to make one run in that will be, for this fabric right here, 7 inches wide. 7 inches from here to here. Go ahead and shape flex this entire piece of fabric. Go ahead and shape flex it. These are going to be your pockets. And these are going to be, and I'll show you over here. This is going to be this pocket here, and the other half will be this pocket here. So one run of your fashion fabric will give you 2 pockets. The lining fabric that I'm using is a nice pretty purple that's really cute, and it's going to line your pocket. So I'm going to cut, once again, I'm going to cut a complete run, one run of lining fabric that is 6 inches wide, not 7, but 6. And you're going to go ahead and shape flex the back of this one as well. And it's okay to Frankenstein it. See how I've got the join right here? It's okay to Frankenstein it. We're going to be sewing on this thing, so it's okay to go ahead and piece your shape flex together. Why is this piece 1 inch less than this piece right here? Because when I do that, I make a really nice, my fashion fabric here pulls over all the way over, and it gives me a join like this. So I don't have to worry about finishing this. It gives me that kind of a join right here, because my fashion fabric is 1 inch longer than my lining, and it will wrap over to the back, and it'll make a clean back look. On your fashion fabric, now we're going to join these together. On your fashion fabric, determine what is the direction of up. And since this kind of doesn't really have any up, I think anything is going to be fine. So you've got this long run, you've got this long run of fashion fabric. Take your lining fabric, turn it over, everybody's been shape flexed, and put your lining fabric on top of your fashion fabric and clip them together. What we're going to do, and see how you've got your excess 1 inch here, and I'll show you how that works. What we're going to do is you're going to sew right here 1/4 of an inch and join both of your lining and your fashion fabric. 1/4 inch, go ahead and sew it at the top only. I've joined these together, right sides together, and I've joined them at the top, and I've used 1/4 inch of a seam allowance, and the color of thread is immaterial right now. I don't care what color thread you've got. And so these have both been joined together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them in half, and I'll back up. Now, if you find just because one fabric may be 42 inches, one fabric may be 44 inches. So whatever excess that you may have, go ahead and you can cut that off. So then they can be the same size, but you'll have a little bit of variety because of just the fabric. Put them together, and I'll show you, and I'll back up my camera here a little bit. I've got them together now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them in half right here. So I will have 2 pieces roughly at 22 inches long. Right? I need that gap. I need that extra because that's what makes the gap in the pocket, and that's what makes the pocket fill out. But I'm going to have to cut this in half right now. So I've gone ahead and pressed it, and I've cleaned up any excess that I may have on one fabric or the other. So they're both the same size. Go ahead, I've pressed it. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut them where they're equal in size, but one is different than the other. Okay, for this one, it doesn't matter which one you're talking about, and I'll just play this one right now. Go ahead and take it and fold it over. Alrighty. And then what happens is this one, if I put my raw edges together here and move it up, that extra inch of my dragonfly gets pushed to the back. So it makes a very pretty back look. Now this thing is finished, and I'm going to go ahead and put these together nicely, get this laid out, and I'm going to go ahead and press it, and I'll do that now. This particular piece, because I've left my raw edges raw, this particular piece is my bottom pocket. And I'll move myself over. I apologize. You're just going to have to bear with me. This is this pocket right here. Okay, because that raw seam allowance is going to go to the bottom right here, and then my binding will finish that seam allowance. Not so with the middle pocket. The middle pocket, you can tell, is finished on the top and it's finished on the bottom, and I'll show you how I do that in 2 seconds. All right, this is going to be my second pocket. It is still roughly 22 inches this way, but I've got this extra here, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. Take your lining fabric and make it come flush with your fashion fabric, okay? And go ahead and use your clips here. Wait a minute. Do this and use another one here. So now you have you have it finished here at the top, but now you're going to go ahead and sew again. You're going to sew 1/4 inch right, well, let me see, I just don't want to mess you up. You're going to sew 1/4 inch right here. Color of your thread is interesting but irrelevant. And you're going to go ahead and sew it all the way across, and you're going to have a tube, and then we're going to turn the tube inside out, or right side out. Okay, I've sewn my 1/4 inch, and when you're looking at stitch length, 2.5 or 3 is fine, plenty and everything, just enough to be substantial. Then we're going to go ahead and turn this right side out. I've turned this with the right sides out. This is my dragonfly here, and this is my lining here. The reason why that 1 inch was very nice is because it does finish both sides. So go ahead and take your iron and go ahead and press it where you have the excess fabric kind of centered, everything is kind of centered. So that is your center pocket that looks like this. Now let's make the marks on your pocket so that you know how big do you want your pockets. And again, this is all completely negotiable by you. I just will show you what I do, and you can play with it with what you want. All right, what I've done is, what I'm going to do is make my marks for my pocket. On my bottom pocket, this is the pocket with the raw edges showing. I didn't finish those edges like I did on the top pocket. On the bottom pocket, what you're going to do is you're going to find center. And what I did is I just put it in half, and I ironed a little crease right here. Sorry, I'm bouncing you all around. And then I'm going to mark where that center is. You can use a chalk liner. You can use a friction pen. Friction colors, that's really nice. So you can use whatever you like. I'll use this one, and I'm going to find center here. Okay, so that is my center mark, and you can see that is my center mark right there. That's going to be where I'm going to put it on my my lining, that real pretty purple lining. Put this aside, and let's do this piece. This piece here, I'm going to find center, and you can do it either this way, or you can go ahead and measure it. Now this piece, I'm going to actually make several pockets. I'm going to make 3 pockets on this piece here. But here's my center mark here, okay? So what I'm going to do is on this one, let me show you how I did it on my actual piece. This piece, the bottom piece with the seam allowance that isn't finished, I just made 2 big pockets right here. Okay, that's all I did on the bottom. The center row of pockets, I did 1, 2, 3 pockets. This pocket I left flat with a 6-inch wide. This is flat, and these pockets take up the excess and make 2 expandable pockets. So let me show you how I did that center piece. But this is the one that I want to make a flat pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a simple 6-inch pocket. So I'm going to put my 3 on the center mark here. Make sure that that's pretty on both sides, and go ahead and make your mark. Okay, so that is going to be The center reference, the center line here is just a reference for me to position it on my fabric. This is where I'm going to do my sewing. This is going to make my 6-inch flat pocket, and then the extra that I have here is going to be folded up and turned into a pocket. Now we're going to take our lining fabric. This is the lining that not only is shape flexed, everybody gets shape flex. You can't get away with that without shape flexing, but this also has your Pellon 926. So this is the very sturdy lining. What I've done is I've marked center. It's 17 inches wide, okay? So by my napkin math, that makes the center at about 8.5 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and start with this piece here. This piece is your bottom pocket. This is where your seam is not finished. And this is where the pretty side is going up that way. Okay, so put this on center line right here. Okay, so that's on the center line. Go ahead and put those together. Now take the excess, because you can see I have excess. I have excess right here, but that's what I needed because I needed this to create a pocket. So go ahead and take that excess right here and flush it up against the side of your panel. Okay, do the same on both sides. Alrighty, once I'm done with that, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew. Now you're going to have to use fashion color. So put your purple or whatever color you're using. That has to be fashion color. So go ahead and sew up there. And then I'll double tack. You know, I'll sew a bunch of times up there. And if you wanted, you can come down. But I'll sew it multiple times up there because this gets a lot of action. I want you to sew it here. I want you to sew it here. And I want you to sew it here. Don't sew it here yet. We're not ready to build the pocket. We have to build that pocket. But get those things sewn down on this side, and the center. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play with positioning the excess, because you've got all this excess, but I want that. So what I want to do is I'm going to move a little bit of it over here. Make sure you can see this. I'm going to move it a little bit over here, and I'll make a little pinch pleat here, and I'll, you know, it's just arbitrary how much I'm using, you know, a half a finger worth and everything. Turn it over. Make sure to clear this area right in here. I don't want any excess. I don't want this very close to here because I've got to put a binding on this, and so if this is too close, it's going to make it challenging to put a binding on. So I like that. That's fine. That's offset by about 1 inch. It'll clear. Okay. Take your other excess, and I'm going to go ahead and put a pin here. I'm going to take your other excess, and I'm going to scoot it over here. Where it goes is irrelevant. It all is going to open up the exact same amount. It doesn't matter how deep your pinches are. It's all going to open up. What we're doing is we're just kind of getting it centered where it looks a little bit better and it opens up pretty evenly, but it just doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put this one and I'll offset it by about 1 inch here. You don't need to. You could come all the way over here where this line here was flush with your sew line here. Your call. It isn't important. And I'm going to do that on both sides because I can. Okay, so I like what I've got here. All right, that gives me my 2 bottom pockets. Go ahead and take it back to the sewing machine, and you want to sew it, you know, 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch less, but sew it and go ahead and do a complete sew across all of these pockets here. You only need to sew it once because the binding is going to be your second sew. All right, now we're going to do our second pocket. One thing I wanted to make sure, I was thinking about that. I think you already understood, but let's look at the top. This is considered the top, okay? This is where you had your excess and it folded over on the 926. So sometimes when I'm just starting out, I'll put a one of those on it just to tell me, sorry, just to tell me, hey, this is the top. We're working our way up from the bottom. So this is my top. If you've messed this up, I apologize, but that is the top. So leave that alone. Now we're going to put up our next piece, okay? And this piece, what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark, and you can see my mark here. It's 1 inch. I have a mark of 1 inch on the top of this to here is 1 inch. Go ahead and make that mark. Why that mark and why an inch? Because that mark actually works very well for me to put my D-ring and my strapping that goes around the base of the car seat. So that is actually a great place to put it. Here's my second pocket. This is the one that I've finished both sides, you can see. And I've marked center, just marked it. And then this is going to be a flat center pocket at 6 inches. So go ahead and take this one, put it on the, you can see I'm putting it on the center mark right here. And then I'm lining it up on the line itself. And the same principle that we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make pockets out of that. So let me get that started. All right, I've gone ahead and pinned that down, and what I've done is I've pinned it, and I'm going to, again, like you've done with your bottom pocket here, I'm going to sew on the yellow line here. I'm going to sew on the yellow line here. Leave your center alone, that was just a guideline. So I'm going to sew on both yellow lines. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce the top a bunch. Then I'm going to sew on the side here, and I'm going to sew on the side here. 1/4 inch, scant quarter, and 2.5 sew, and then we'll build the pocket. All right, I've put this on and I've sewn where I've told you to sew. You've got a flat 6 and you've got 2 side sews. Then I've built the pocket exactly like I built your bottom pockets. And then I pushed all of it around. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a final sew on the bottom here. About a 1/4 inch, scant quarter is fine. What I tend to do is, because this bottom doesn't get a second pass that this bottom gets because I put a binding on it, I will sew this bottom 2 times just to reinforce, because there's no way, if it's not reinforced enough, there's no way to go back and fix it easily. So what I'll do is I'll do 2 passes. 2.5 inch stitch length, 3 inch stitch length is fine. And go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build, let me see if I can lift you up a little bit. Here we go. Okay, fine. Now we're going to build, I think we're going to build the vinyl cover. I'm going to use this as my fashion fabric that you'll see. The vinyl will be on top of this, but this will be a cute, I think that looks about right and everything. But this is where you can have a lot of fun. If you're making this for a little kid, and you don't have to stick necessarily with quilting cotton in this piece. You could go with something really cute in flannel, because they've got really cute kids themed flannel, unicorns and, turtles, sea turtles, all kinds of really cool stuff. So have fun with this. So I'm going to cut this 12 inches wide by 9 inches. Let me see, what did I do? Yes, 9 inches tall. Okay, so 12 by 9, shape flex, 12 by 9. Now the lining piece, I'm going to cut a little bit larger. I'm going to cut it 12 inches, but I'm going to cut it a little bit longer. How much longer did I cut it? I guess I cut it about 10 inches long. Why? Because I thought it would be cute that instead of this rolling over to the back and joining up with the lining, that the lining is the larger piece now, and it rolls over to the front and it gives me a little topper right here. I'll show you in a minute, but put these together, right sides together, clip them, and sew at the top here, 1/4 inch color immaterial of your thread. Sew it a 1/4 inch, and I'll show you what we're doing. All right, I've gone ahead and sewn those together, and I've got my fashion fabric and my lining. Why do I do that? Why do I put a lining? Really, because this is nice fabric. This is nice fabric, but it's just economy of scale. I don't want to waste really good fabric on a lining piece, so I'd rather waste it on what the public sees. So I'm going to go ahead, take this, and then I'm going to go ahead and put these together. and make that so now I have a little bit of a really cute little binding. What I want to do now is I want to finish making my vinyl. I want to finish this off at the top. I want to get, and I'll move you, and I apologize, but I'll move you and I'll show you what I mean. I want to build something like this. We just built this piece right here, right? We just built that. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish my lining or my vinyl off, and I'm going to put a topper on my vinyl. How do I do that? In your fashion fabric, in your purple fashion fabric, you should have a fair amount left over. I want you to make one run at 2 inches. You're going to make multiple runs here, but I want you to make one run at 2 inches. And I'll tell you, you're going to need multiple runs. You'll need some 2.5-inch runs, and you'll need some 2 3/4-inch runs. It doesn't have to be this fabric. You can, if you've got stash fabric, you can pick any really cute fabric. Why 2 inches? I don't need this thing especially huge. I like that size is about right, and that's about a 2-inch that finish, you know, if you open all this thing up, it's about 2 inches. So I don't need this particularly large. I just need to finish off this top. So I'm going to have a 2-inch run, and I'm going to make a binding for that top, and I'll show you how. Okay, here's my vinyl, and I've cut it pretty precisely because I want this about right. I've cut it 12 inches wide, and I've cut it 9 inches tall. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and try to finish the top of this. Here's my 2-inch run of fabric. This is 2 inches here, and I've creased it down the center. Go ahead and get it just about, you know, go ahead and cut it where it is 12 inches or slightly over 12 inches, something that will finish this vinyl. I've made a center, I've folded it, pressed it, made a center. Go ahead and use that center mark and go ahead and put those together. Keep your iron away from your vinyl. So I've put them together like that. Now what I'm going to do is fold them nicely together with my raw or my finished edges meeting. Okay, so that is my binding. Here is my vinyl. She's getting all steamy. Put it on your vinyl, shove it up into the corner here, shove it up into here, and go ahead and once again use your clips. And you can put any excess that you have, shove that up. Now what you're going to do now is you're going to take this to the iron, or to the sewing machine, and you're going to sew with your fashion color, and you're going to sew real tight here. I want you to sew pretty tight here, and then you're going to sew up here, okay? And make it larger stitches, and let me show you what this is going to look like. It's going to look like, well, I've only sewed it one time down here, but you can sew it another time up in here. But I want you a long stitch. I want a 3.5-inch stitch, or 3.5 width stitch. Or why? Because vinyl has no ability to recover. If you go really tight on this, if you went a 2, it's like perforating paper. It just doesn't recover, and it'll rip right off. So make sure that every time you play with your vinyl, you're on a very large stitch length. So go ahead and do that. Okay, I've gone ahead and done the topper for my vinyl. Vinyl's hard to kind of see. You can see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vinyl and put it on top of the panel that I've made here. And then just go ahead and line that up, get that about right. I have a little extra over here, but that's going to be covered up with another binding, so I'm not too worried about that. So this one is done. Go ahead and set this aside, and now we're going to work on our bottle piece, and I want to show you what piece I'm using here. I'm using this size of a, let's see if I back up. That's a pretty nice size bottle. That's about the right size bottle that I've got and everything, and so I don't know what size bottle you are, but let me show you how you measure that. I'm using a Camelback water bottle. This is this was a good size for me. And it's measuring, between 9.5 and 10 inches, depending on where you are, where you're measuring here. But that's about right. So if you've got a bottle in the vicinity of this size, then my technique is going to help you. Okay, so let's start. Take your 1/2 inch elastic and let's cut it at 6.5 inches wide. So this is 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. So we're going to do 6.5 inches wide. Now I'm going to go ahead and take your bottle here, okay, put it up toward the top, put your fingers right about here and here, or wherever what I'm doing is I'm pulling it taut, and you can see here how I'm pulling it taut and finishing it at the bottom of my desk here, and I'm putting my fingers where that is finishing, and I'm pulling it tight so that I have, it stays in. So that makes it about here, right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a mark about here, and I'm going to make a mark about here. And what that does is that tells me, what that means is that from this line over, it's stretching like crazy to get over the bottle. From this line here, it's kind of dead. It's just going to get sewn to the fabric. Now we're going to make the bottle holder. Okay, this is your bottle holder. I'm going to use fashion fabric for my bottle holder. And I'm going to use a lining fabric. This case I had blue. I think that's cute. You don't really see it, so I don't care. So this piece is measuring, let me get you the right measurements. This piece, the water bottle, hold on, keep your panties on. The water bottle, the fashion fabric. This is my fashion fabric. My direction is going up, wherever your fashion fabric is, and it runs 11 inches this way by 10 inches this way. And if you have directional fabric, you're going to need to cut it 11 wide by 10 tall. If you don't have directional fabric, you can play with it any way you want. But so 11 inches by 10. My lining is still 11 inches tall. My lining here is, 11 inches wide. My lining here is still 11 inches wide, okay? But again, I want it to move, I want my fashion fabric to move back. So my lining fabric is 9 inches this way by 11 inches this way. But I also need to get this in to my piece. So let me show you how to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to take your fashion fabric. If it's directional, make sure that you're looking at it in the direction that you like. Okay. Take your bottle fabric. Everybody's been shape flexed. Take your bottle fabric and go ahead and pin these together. All right. But what I need to do is I need to make some lines here, because once I put my elastic in, it's going to squeeze everything and it's going to make it very disconnected. Now it's nice and flat, but it's going to make it unnice and unflat real quick here. So what I'm going to do is, I know I've got extra fabric in this technique. I do have extra fabric because your bottle may be different. You may need a lot more than 6.5 inches. I don't know. Don't go too much taller than what I'm doing, because you have, I'll show you, you kind of have limited space up here. I can go a little bit taller if I so choose, but the way I'm designing it right now is this is going to be flush with this, and that's going to fit well. But don't go too tall, because you run out of room here. So then I'm going to go ahead and make some lines on my fashion fabric. And I'm going to come in, because I've done this before, I'm going to come in 1.25 inches on each side and make it here and, sorry, I could take that lining off, and 1.25 inches on this side. Okay. What does that do for me? It gives me a sew line, because once I put that elastic in, everything's going to get jumbled up, and I need that sew line because I need it. I need it, and you're going to understand why. Once you've made your lines here, go ahead and sew 1/4 inch color in material, 2.5 stitch length is fine. Go ahead and sew 1/4 inch on the top.